Don't mess with me, pork chop. What day is this?
It's February 2nd. Groundhog Day.
You know, I thought it was yesterday.
Oh.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's more bad news for IDW Publishing. It's not really their fault as much as it is just IDW Entertainment, all of course, which falls underneath the IDW media umbrella, which has been taking enormous financial losses for years now. Most of their IP that they were working with within the comics realm, which they started out pretty much as a comics company, they've expanded since then, are licensed products. And that's one of the big issues at IDW. They wanted to expand out into streaming, movies, seeing the success that DC Comics has had, Marvel Comics has had, even, obviously Mark Miller with Netflix, things like that. But they didn't really have a lot of premium original IP at IDW. But they decided to kind of go all in with Winona Earp over at Sci-Fi. They self-financed, a couple of shows. There's a zombie. I think there's a vampire show, zombie show, whatever. On Netflix, those didn't work out. Obviously, Lock and Key was a hit, and they did recoup some money on that. But they've been footing the bill for all the cost of production. Although I do believe Sci-Fi might have went in like halvesies on the last season. But they've been taking enormous losses. And IDW Publishing hasn't exactly been doing great either. They've been also taking losses, but nothing on the scale of IDW Entertainment as far as the IDW media. And it's all, and eventually all these things are rolling downhill. And we have now, there's been so much upheaval at IDW Publishing. Obviously, they fired Chris Ryall. They brought him back as the president, the publisher, and the chief creative officer. And he left. He kind of up and left. I think he could see the writing on the wall at IDW that the future might not be bright. Things might not be stable. So he left. They promoted, I believe it was Jud Meyers, into the position of publisher. And within a week, they had to put him on administrative leave. There were some issues there. They finally promoted another person up to publisher and gave him the boot. They promoted another person up to president, Jerry Bennington, and he's leaving. He just, it appears, we're not sure if he got fired or if he left voluntarily, but just this week, he's leaving IDW Publishing. They also lost Lorelei Bunjes, who was one of their vice presidents for like streaming and technology. Huge loss for the company. It looks like people, the rats are leaving a sinking ship, unfortunately. I'm not very happy about this. Obviously, we are going to talk about the third quarter financial statements as well. They don't look good. Also, what they're stating is the reasons for their losses don't really add up to what we're actually seeing in the comic book industry. We are going to talk to Perch about this, and he's going to give his thoughts on it. But it sucks as a comic book reader. IDW does have a lot of licensed properties, and they do them well. I just reviewed the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin. It's my favorite comic book of 2021. I'm sorry, 2020, easily. That's a 5-star comic. I loved it. It was great. What they do with their Ghostbuster comics are very good. I'm told, I believe they do a My Little Pony. People seem to like that. G.I. Joe, Stalwart brand. They've got a lot of stuff. I know a lot of people are big fans of, I believe they have Sonic as well. But a lot of their non-licensed stuff, like their original stuff, is actually cool. The Highest House, before The Last God on DC Black Label, The Highest House was like the best original fantasy comic I've read in a long time. Easily. If you haven't read The Highest House, go check it out if you like fantasy. It's cool. Thinking about The Kill Lock, Livio Ramondelli, that miniseries, one of the best sci-fi comics I've read. Certainly the best sci-fi comic I've read in 2020. Even better than Blade Runner 2019 and some of the other ones that I recommend a lot here on the channel. So they do a lot of great stuff. Right now, there's a great all-ages comic book called Canto 2, The Hollow Men. It's the sequel to Canto that came out, I believe, in 2018. Maybe it was 2019. Fantastic comic book. Very well illustrated. Great original IP. Great story. IDW Publishing is important. It's important for the industry. It's a good place, and they put out quality comic books. And it's just unfortunate that they're being taken down by the mismanagement and the follies on the part of IDW Entertainment and IDW Media, where they didn't have the properties to properly go out and roll these ideas out to get into streaming, to get into movies. They went and took a big gamble. And sometimes when you take a risk, you lose. And they've pretty much lost big time. They already had to essentially sell off, I think it's CTM. It was kind of like, it didn't really fit into entertainment and in comic books, but there's another portion of their business that was doing like brochures and catalogs and stuff like that. They actually had to sell that off to their president, Howard Jonas, because he's invested so much money into the company and they haven't given him anything back. That was like their payment, for the loan that he gave them. They haven't been able to borrow money on normal markets for a long time. They're having to do, they can't go to a bank and borrow money because the credit's so bad right now. And like I said, it's terrible. And it just keeps adding up. It's always raining at IDW Publishing and just IDW in general. They lost more executives this week. 2 of them. Last quarter sales, more losses. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin, probably the most anticipated IDW comic book, I don't know, the last decade, certainly the last 2 or 3 years, didn't print off enough comic books to meet the demand. I'm going to get into it. We're going to bring Perch here on the channel here in a second, but it's terrible. I'm not happy about this. I don't like having to deliver this news again, but it's the same song and dance. IDW is terribly mismanaged, and they're kind of on borrowed time. I think we're all at this point. We're all just waiting for the announcement that IDW is folding, or somebody purchased it for pennies on the dollar. Because it's too bad. The comics are great, but everything else about IDW just seems to be a dumpster fire. So let's kind of get into the details. I'm going to bring Perch on here, and we're going to discuss it right now. So Perch, it feels like IDW cannot catch a break. We all know the kind of bungling that happened when they named, I believe it was Jud Meyers as their new publisher, and then within a week they had to put him on administrative leave. They had to replace him. Chris Ryall came back after being fired, only stayed in the job as publisher, chief creative officer, and president for, I think, it was about a year and a half. And now they're losing another a couple more executives. Vice President of Technology and Information Services, Lorelei Bunjes, as well as their new president, Jerry Bennington.
Yeah, it's a revolving door over at IDW, and it's not for companies that are small and their owners, their board, the VCs that are giving the money, whoever it might be. When you get toward the end and it's not turning a profit, things aren't turning around fast enough, you tend to see things like that happening. They just start throwing kind of executives in hopes of a quick pop and somebody who can make something happen with very short time frames. And no, none of this is. We've talked about IDW a lot before. This is absolutely unhealthy.
Yeah, we've been covering, obviously, the woes of IDW for quite a while now. I didn't even really cover the third quarter financial reports. I have the information here because it was kind of more the same. Once again, losses over $3 million. Another $1 million losses of discontinued operations that has to do with CMT. Over $4.5 million lost in the third quarter of 2020 versus the 0.4 million, so $400,000 lost in the second quarter when they were really affected and things were shut down. So they weren't really losing money just because they weren't operating. But once they came back online, they started losing money again. IDW Publishing, you can see in the third quarter, they did have $5.2 million of revenue. But as far as income, looks like they were even, although in the prior quarter, they did have a $600,000 loss. And in comparison to the third quarter of 2019, a $1.2 million loss. IDW Entertainment continues just hemorrhaging money for the company, just putting Winona Earp season 5 or whatever is into sci-fi drain the coffers once again.
It did. I mean, so IDW is got one kind of out and one plan here, and that's get some of their original IP to get picked up and become a hit on one of these streaming services, and start to rebuild kind of the franchise of the company. And to do that, they're going to float the company on some licensable material, like what they're doing with G.I. Joe, like what they've done with Marvel, and they're going to hopefully be able to sustain revenue long enough, not have as much loss, while one of those properties catches and gets popular and becomes kind of the big thing that allows the investors to get back their money. Unfortunately, they're just so deep into that hole now, and the properties aren't popping, and they're getting kind of outpaced by bigger players. I mean, Marvel themselves just entering this race and starting to produce their own series with a higher budget and more audience, and they don't have to shop the show. They've got a ready-made platform for it. That ultimately is a problem. What HBO Max is doing is a problem. So IDW finds themselves increasingly in trouble and just not able to kind of dig themselves out of this hole. And it's the clock is ticking. The investors are clearly showing exhaustion at this point.
So this is what Ezra Rosen-Saff, the chief executive officer at IDW Publishing, had to say. In the third quarter, IDW's publishing operations continued to be impacted by the closure of many comic shops in our direct market distributor, Diamond, in the spring, May 20th. Diamond resumed operations on a limited basis. However, direct market volumes have not yet recovered to pre-pandemic levels. Haven't really heard anybody say that, but that is in their quarterly report. They also said it as far as their highlights. IDW Publishing generated year-over-year improvement for the second consecutive quarter despite challenges related to COVID-19. The year-over-year increases in IDW's consolidated loss from operations resulted from production expenses realized upon delivery of the first 5 Winona Earp Season 4 episodes, and a reversal of certain accruals partially offset by the improved results from IDW Publishing. So it doesn't really matter what IDW Publishing does, because IDW Entertainment is just taking the ship down.
Well, yeah, exactly. And again, it raises too many questions. You've got other publishers, book publishers, saying they're having record profits right now. You've got the streaming services being kind of the one kind of glowing light in this pandemic for entertainment companies. And IDW plays in both and is not succeeding in either. That is the problem. And so you're going to continue to see executives kind of revolve through this company while they try and find somebody who can either right the ship, or increasingly, the thing to watch out for is a president or somebody who comes in who has absolutely zero experience in comics and is coming more from the investment banking standpoint or background, or somebody like that. And when you see that,
just to get it ready for a sale.
Exactly. I think that the next executive, one or two will be somebody from investment banking, and then you'll know that the title, we're heading into full fire sale territory. I don't know, the head of their digital was a more, I think, alarming vanishing than the president in many cases, because that's showing that even the people who are trying to bring things up in tech and information services, IT, which should be a place to continue to invest in, sounds like she bailed herself. Mm-hmm. Whereas Jerry Bennington, we're not sure, but it feels like he was kind of asked to step aside. So who knows for sure, but it's bad news.
So Gittigan, they will probably make a little bit more money in their fourth quarter because of the overwhelming interest in the last Ronin. Each of these comics that cover price is $9.99, but they even bungled this. They decided to pre-print their orders, and they massively underestimated the amount of interest. It turned out the orders for the last Ronin on FOC were like 130,000. They printed way less than that. And we can see over here on eBay, prices obviously are spiking immediately. It's a $50 comic book. I've been told by viewers of the channel that they were entered into a lottery from their retailer because they didn't have enough comics for their pull list. It's just,
yeah, this is so here's my crazy speculation, theory. My crazy one is that this story and what's going on here is actually related to the president being asked to go. And I say that from the standpoint of, you just issued a quarterly report to your investors saying that sales had not come up at comic shops, that they were not seeing the same things going out, and because of the pandemic, things were on a hold. And then you have this story from your own company where you massively misunderstood the demand for your own comic, and you got a bunch of other shops basically saying, we want to sell your content, but you didn't give it to us. That shows mismanagement at a really insane level. And I again, probably not related, but here's my crazy conspiracy theory of the day. I think these two are linked because this is just an embarrassing black eye.
I think they are too. I think they didn't have enough money to print a full run.
Yeah, well, I think that as well. I think they didn't have enough money to print a full run. I think they shifted that money into other things that didn't necessarily pan out. And I think they missed a big opportunity. And this story and everything that happened here, it is a direct contradiction to what they put in their annual report. And investors and board members don't like that.
Yeah, like I said, every time we talk about IDW, when it comes to the business side, it's always dark because there just hasn't been anything good to report. They do have good comics out there, and that's the worst part, is we need a nice, strong, healthy IDW moving forward. Don't know how much longer they're gonna make it. Perch, is there anything else that you need to say about IDW before we kind of wrap this segment up?
No, just thanks for having me on.
Well, I appreciate you coming by, and I'll see you. I'll see you Saturday. One way or the other, we are going to talk about Batman 3 Jokers and wrap it up.
Excellent. Talk to you soon.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.